The People Station, 104.7 WLOU, streaming live at WLOUFM.com, and we're going to cut right to the chase. So, earlier this afternoon, Attorney General Merrick Garland was in town to deliver the findings of an investigation of the Louisville Metro Police Department and Louisville Metro Government. This was 2 years in the making, and I told you a little bit ago we wanted to get a little more in depth as to what's going on. So back in the studio, I've actually threatened to put them on the air on a regular basis. It's in honor of the Mayor, Greenberg, and Chief of Louisville Metro Police Department, Jaqueline Gwinn, Villaroel. Good afternoon, folks.
Good afternoon.
How's everybody doing?
We are doing. Today has been, as the days leading up to today have certainly been a challenge for everybody involved in working with the Department of Justice, but today is an important day, a necessary day, that the Department of Justice issue its findings and that we as a community now find ways to move forward together to improve and reform our police department, to strengthen trust with our police, and really strive towards having the most trusted, trained, and transparent police department in America.
And when you took office, this was one of the things that you said that you were looking forward to seeing, because transparency has been a cornerstone of your administration, and we got the findings, and let's be honest, they weren't good.
Well, the chief and I both took our role offices on January 2nd.
Right.
And we took office knowing that this investigation was nearing its conclusion, but not knowing what the findings might be. Yet we both took our jobs knowing we would inherit and embrace the opportunity to reform and improve LMPD, and in turn build a safer city, a stronger city together. And so we now have the results of those findings. For very certainly some of the incidents are incredibly difficult to hear about and to read about, but it's important that they're out there so we can move forward.
And Chief, for your part, you've come into a department that was already in flux. We've been through, in the time that I've been here, 3 other police chiefs in the space of maybe 10 or 15 years. 2 of them within a 5 or 6 year period. For any business, that doesn't give you confidence as far as stability is concerned. So from your perspective, coming in at the tail end of this investigation, coming into a department that's already had its challenges, I remember our first conversation and some of the goals that you had in regards to the LMPD. Having been able to see some of the findings, and we'll talk about what some of those are, just a big picture impressions. Were some of these things that you expected to see, maybe some things you weren't expecting? Your first blush when you got the results of the investigation.
Unfortunately, some of the things in the report I was bracing to see because we had intelligence when we first got here to Louisville. There have been some breakdown in supervisory individuals actually providing the skills needed in order to push their officers in the right direction. So when you know that there's a lack of supervision in place, then you know that there's going to be a breakdown in what officers are doing. And,
just in the global scheme of things, there have been people that have been calling for a consent decree for this department for years. Personally speaking, me being one of them, having seen what happened in Cincinnati a few years ago. They were under a federal consent decree. I think they still are. And the changes have been rather profound as far as that department goes. Consent decrees, for the most part, work. So let's talk about what some of the findings were. Among the biggest were the abuse of civil rights and basically police brutality. These are problems that plague a lot of police departments, and the recommendations that the DOJ have set forth, I've had a chance to take a look at the report, and a lot of them are common sense approaches. And I'm sure that you've both taken a look at those as well. Are you seeing anything in that report? And by the way, you can see that report on our Facebook page. We've got a link to it in its entirety. Anything in that report that you agree with, disagree with, or can possibly augment on a local level?
So right now, we have just been briefed on the findings. We, myself, and the mayor, we need to actually review the entire report in its totality. And so for me to be able to give you pretty much a better answer to that, but just by the findings that we've heard or the skeleton list of findings that were listed today, it's disheartening.
Yeah.
And we don't want to hear that. No agency, especially a chief, does not want to hear that officers are operating in a manner that just actually tarnishes the badge. No agency and no CEO of a city wants to hear that. So with that, we're going to be able to digest that report and just see exactly what is going on and what their findings were, and just in detail, in order for us to address some of those concerns.
And Mayor Greenberg, the city was not found without fault as well. There were some findings that Metro Government had a little bit of culpability in what's going on. And again, you being a longtime resident and a business owner, you've interacted with the city for years. What are you seeing first blush, first impressions of the report that you saw from the Metro perspective?
Well, as the chief just said, it's difficult to read. And for me, as the mayor of Louisville, whether it's LMPD or the city, ultimately, that's now my responsibility as mayor. And so I accept that we must move forward together. And we, with this day being here, let's move forward. As the chief said, some of their findings, some of their recommendations are around training and supervision. And having the strong leadership of Chief Gwinn Villaroel is critically important. Her and her team are going to be charged with implementing these reforms, hiring the people to do enhanced training, to communicate enhanced policies and stronger policies. These are all things that some of which have already started. The city has taken some steps forward. We have banned no-knock warrants. We've implemented some deflection calls so that when you call 911 and it's more of a behavioral health crisis as opposed to a violent crime emergency, a mental health professional can be discharged. We need to expand that program. We need to make it citywide. We need to expand the hours. So we have been preparing to do a lot of things. We need to implement those. We know the community is calling for action, and they will begin to see that action under the chief and my leadership.
So we've got the findings. The agreement is already in place to begin working with the Department of Justice. Just from an average citizen's point of view, what does that look like, or what's next? Now that you've got the findings, you're going to have a time to digest them. What are the next steps following your?
Yeah, I'll just briefly say on that, that so we agreed when the department reached out to us and gave us a confidential briefing on their findings. There were many options that we had as to what we could do. We decided we wanted to cooperate and collaborate with the Department of Justice to begin immediately, continuing to implement reforms, continuing our efforts to improve LMPD. And so so today what we signed was an agreement in principle, a 2-page document where we acknowledge their findings and we commit to negotiating in good faith towards a consent decree, which would be a much longer document that spells out in specificity what reforms we've both agreed to undertake, and that would be under the supervision of a federal judge. So that will take months to negotiate. However, let me be clear, the chief and I and our teams, we're not waiting. We've already started, and we're going to continue to work every day on reforms and improvement to make LMPD a police department that everyone in our city is proud of.
One last question, because I know you are pressed for time. One of the concerns that you are most likely going to hear would be pushback from the union. How are you prepared to deal with that?
With that, having just truly open dialogue with the president of the union, understanding that we, again, when I said necessary parties coming together, collectively and collaborating collectively. That's everybody. There's everybody who has a vested interest in making sure the Louisville Police Department is a premier department. So everybody needs to be at the table and have that mindset that we want the best for our officers and we want the best for our citizens of this great city. They deserve that. And so I'm hopeful. I'm very optimistic. I'm putting it on air today for you. I'm very optimistic that all minds will come together and we will be on the same page because we want a great department.
All right, so once again, we're talking on the heels of the findings of the Department of Justice, a 2-year investigation into LMPD and Louisville Metro Government. Well, the task has been laid out, and we're definitely going to keep you up to date as both entities make progress, because the fact that you guys reached out to us first as far as radio entities, we really appreciate that. That gives us basically it kind of emphasizes one of the missions that we have as a radio station, is keeping people informed. So I am looking forward to hearing from the both of you as far as progress being made. Again, you can read the report. It is online. It's on our Facebook page. I've gotten through about 10 pages of it in a little bit of time. So there's a lot of work to be done. Anything you want to let everybody else know before I cut you loose?
No, I just want to conclude by saying the chief and I are not making any excuses for what happened in the past. We are going to be making changes. We are going to be making progress, continued progress towards reform and improvement.
And one of the things that I've continued to say to you, and I've always said about this administration, is that it's proactive, and this is another example of it. And I thank you both for hanging out with us this afternoon, because this is extremely important to our listeners, extremely important to everybody here in Louisville. We've got another Black Information Network news update for you, total traffic, and we will also get into more classic R&B. It's the original soul of Louisville, 104.7 WLOU.
Spreading the original soul of Louisville all over the Commonwealth. Shelbyville.
Thank you.
Let's get you over to LLU. I mean, LLV. Good grief.
That interview probably has to be shorter.
You told us that you wanted a station that everybody could listen to.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to cut you down, keep you down to 10 minutes.